The Toronto Raptors have made a move as Woj came out yesterday and announced that the Toronto Raptors have signed a three-point shooter that has a 42-inch vertical. So we'll break down who Joe Wieskamp is and what potential impact he can have on the team. Additionally, Josh Lewenberg reported that Fred VanVleet over this summer turned down a $114 million extension and he's looking for more this summer. So we'll discuss that whole Fred VanVleet situation as well as a couple of potential trade targets that could be open on the market and one guy that we almost traded for before he went down with injury. So lots of stuff to break down. Without further ado, let's jump into the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is the Toronto Raptors signing Joe Wieskamp to a 10-day contract. Now, people are wondering, they saw the Woj tweet, they saw the bomb go off, and maybe some people got excited as we've had a multitude of Toronto Raptors rumors go down, but we started off, sort of trade season making a minor move as Woj came out and said the Toronto Raptors have signed G League guard forward Joe Wieskamp to a 10-day contract. According to his agents, he played 29 games with the Spurs a season ago, and is a guy that, on paper, seems to be intriguing, right? He's, looking at his sort of player stature, he has a 42 max inch vertical. He came in as a guy that's 6'7" in shoes and has a 6'11" wingspan. And in college, he shot 46% from behind the three-point line. So a guy that, if you're just looking from afar, kind of has all the intangibles in terms of a player that the Toronto Raptors need. He's a solid athlete, he knocks down threes, and could potentially have an impact coming off the bench for the Toronto Raptors. Now, unfortunately, while he definitely does have some potential, I'm excited to see him on the court. My hopes are a little bit reserved, just looking at what especially Spurs fans had to say about him following his tenure down there in San Antonio. As when he was waived, some fans were essentially saying, I creeped through Reddit posts and what people were saying about his game, also looking at the eye test from some of his highlights with the Spurs. And yes, he can knock down some shots, but his stats last year weren't that intriguing. They weren't that encouraging in terms of a guy that is going to have a big impact. I mean, 2 points per game. He only played 7 minutes a night and 33% from behind the three-point line, so struggled to knock down his shots in a relatively low amount of minutes. But Spurs fans seem to value Romeo Langford over him and were happy when they took him rather than Joe Wieskamp. There were a couple of people that thought he had a lot of potential, but didn't really show anything, according to a lot of Spurs fans on Twitter and Reddit, in terms of that really made them, fall for him. Not like a guy for the Toronto Raptors like Ishmael Wainwright or even a Sam Decker that had their moments, even a Justin Champagnie for some fans, right? Had flashes that gained a lot of supporters for the guy, and Wieskamp didn't really build that down in San Antonio, so we'll see if he can have an impact on the team. Definitely the intangibles are there. Right, the base level skill set is there, especially what he's coming in with from college, even though he didn't have the greatest impact in his rookie season with the San Antonio Spurs, but could definitely be a guy we take a risk on. And, coming from a Spurs organization, if they scouted you and thought of you as a valuable player, then I trust the Spurs watchful eye in terms of scouting, right, in terms of finding diamonds in the rough. And if it didn't work out there, we can definitely take a shot on a 10-day contract, and we'll see if he actually gets to play. I mean, if he can shoot, give it a shot, right? Give it a shot. We'll see what ends up happening. But the next thing we're taking a look at in this video is Fred VanVleet declined a max contract from the Toronto Raptors this offseason. Now, Fred VanVleet's motto is bet on yourself. And he bet on himself this season, and so far it's not looking too hot for him because Josh Lewenberg came out today and basically gave some insight into where Fred VanVleet's head was at this offseason and what he's looking for this summer, and also got roasted for sort of backing Fred VanVleet. So I'll go through a few excerpts from his article, basically saying that prior to the start of the season, Fred VanVleet turned down a contract extension worth roughly $114 million, the maximum Toronto could have offered him at the time, according to a source. He's eligible to sign an extension up to that value until the end of this campaign, but considering he can make more money in free agency, he literally wears the mantra, bet on yourself, across his chest. It's not a surprise that he would prefer to let his current deal expire and negotiate a new one. So that had a lot of Toronto Raptors fans up in roar because they're saying, one, Masai Ujiri, what are you doing even offering this guy this contract? I mean, you look at his stats this season and they're not too hot. He's been trash. He's been bagged on a bunch. 19 points per game, six assists, 32% behind the three-point line. not great stuff. 1.6 deals is still there. Not horrific by any means, but he's not living up to that max contract standard that he's certainly looking for. And Bloomberg went on to say, to ruffle more Toronto Raptors fans' feathers, went on to say that in terms of what Fred VanVleet will be looking for in the open market, a 4-year, $130 million deal that Tyler Hero got last fall is expected to be the baseline. Officially, the Raptors don't have to decide whether or not they're going to be the team that gives them that money until July, but essentially though, they've gotten to make that decision within the next 5 weeks ahead of the February 9th trade deadline, or they risk losing him for nothing. So the Toronto Raptors, unless they want to let an asset like Fred VanVleet walk for nothing this summer, they have to decide whether or not they want to give him a max contract in the next few weeks. And while I disagree with Josh Bloomberg, and I'll go on to more that he said in this article, that I don't think there's any team, if he continues to play at this level, right, that he's playing at right now, any team is going to be willing to give him a 4-year, $130 million deal. And I don't think Masai Ujiri, even though he's fumbled some moves in recent years, I don't think he's going to bargain against himself or bid against himself against, giving Fred VanVleet more money than he has to. So even if he's a free agent this summer, then I don't think he's going to get that money given his poor performance this season. But you do have to make a decision if you want to give him some big bags, if you want to give him some a serious contract, because Fred VanVleet is a dude that, he's betting on himself. He wants the bag. He's definitely done a lot for the Toronto Raptors. And I see why in his head. As a guy that was an all-star last season, that brought this team to an NBA championship just a few seasons ago, where he was a big part of that team that won, closed a lot of games in that playoff run. And even though he's in a down year this year, certainly believes that he deserves all the money that he can, he feels like he's earned over the last few seasons. So I don't blame Fred VanVleet for thinking that, but let me know what contracts you guys would offer me you think he'll get on the open market. But Josh Bloomberg also got some heat for saying that the Toronto Raptors have failed Fred VanVleet this season, not the other way around, and basically had this to say in his article, that if anything that's affected his production, it's the substantial workload he carries and the myriad of injuries he regularly plays through, which are so often related. Since the 2019-2020 campaign, only Harden has averaged more minutes than Fred VanVleet. He's currently leading the NBA in distance traveled per game and for the third straight season. Some guys are built for the heavy minute players. Siakam, he goes on to say Lowry is also a guy that can handle that. But at Fred VanVleet's size, generally listed at 6'1", 197 pounds, and the way he plays, especially with his shot isn't falling and attacking the rim with more regularity, these 40 minutes nights are just unsustainable. Now, he titled the article that Fred VanVleet hasn't failed the Toronto Raptors, the Raptors have failed him, and that got a lot of heat. People are sort of going at Josh Bloomberg right now, as Raptors fans are with anybody that's sort of backing Fred VanVleet. So let me know if you agree with Josh Bloomberg. I see where Bloomberg's coming from. I don't definitively disagree with him, but I do think Fred VanVleet definitely has some reasons to be blamed for his struggles and the Raptors' struggles this year. But Fred VanVleet loves to bet on yourself. If you want to bet on the Toronto Raptors, definitely check out the link down below and sign up for CoolBet, as they're the best sports book across Canada. Or they're regulated in Ontario. They're available all across Canada. You can bet on every single Raptors game, NBA game, or any sport really in general, right? You can get down there and you get custom boosted odds if you sign up using our link in the description. The boosts, you make more money out of those boosted odds. So definitely sign up for that. Let myself or Goody know. We'll add you to our Discord to get those custom boosts. And, bet for the Toronto Raptors against the Toronto Raptors. Do whatever you feel like is going to win, because the Raptors aren't looking too hot just as of late. But the next thing we're taking a look at, another thing to make some bets on, predictions on, are Turner and Clarkson potentially available for Raptors trade. Now, Jordan Clarkson, Miles Turner, two guys that have been in a lot of Raptors trade rumors over the past 3 or 4 months. And news has come out that Miles Turner, and to this point, has rebuffed Indiana's contract extension offers, league sources say. Ditto for Jordan Clarkson in Utah. So basically what that means is Miles Turner, Jordan Clarkson are not close to signing a contract extension with either of their teams. Now, what does that mean? Especially in the case of Miles Turner, reports have come out that if they don't come close to an extension before this year's trade deadline, they've essentially said they're coming out and they're going to trade Miles Turner this season. This year will finally be the year that Miles Turner is traded. Now, Miles Turner is a guy a lot of Raptors fans have wanted for a long time. We've had a bunch of rumors, and he's a big man that has 17 points per game this season, 8 rebounds, 2.2 blocks per night. He's a rim protector. He knocks down the three-point shot. On paper, he's the perfect center for the Toronto Raptors. Mobility-wise, isn't that great. Wouldn't really fit a lot of our switching systems, but still would be a guy we could plug in there, adjust our defenses a little bit to have him into the mix, and could be a really nice acquisition. Now, if the Toronto Raptors are going en route for the tank, or if we're going for Victor Wembanyama, right, might not make sense to trade for Miles Turner just yet at this point. Maybe go offer him a contract this offseason, but we'll see what ends up happening on that front. And Jordan Clarkson's also a dude that could really help the Toronto Raptors in terms of scoring punch off the bench. I mean, 21 points per game, 4 rebounds, close to 5 assists, right? They're 36% behind the three-point line. You know, the Utah Jazz, they've been winning games as of late. I'd be surprised if he ends up leaving that situation, even if they don't come to a contract extension agreement. But two guys that could potentially be gotten on the open market that could be really cool fits. So let me know if you guys aren't fully bought into the tank just yet, and we should go trade for one of these players. But the final topic, the final thing we're taking a look at in this video is the Raptors want to trade for Kelly Oubre to help the bench. Now, just a couple weeks ago, we were still debating an impasse whether the Toronto Raptors should go, bounce back, make some deals really quick to win some games, or maybe, play in for what? What are we really doing? I guess we're still at that sort of impasse, but one player the Raptors almost traded for that they were interested in was Kelly Oubre Jr. from the Charlotte Hornets. Basically, Mark Stein came out and said that it also makes sense that numerous teams were interested in him. Stein mentioned the Cavs, the Suns, and the Toronto Raptors as possibilities, and went on to say the Raptors sorely need more bench production. The struggling 16 and 23 team sits at number 26 in terms of bench scoring this season and heavily relies on starters Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet on a nightly basis. Adding Oubre would provide some relief. So Stein mentioned the Toronto Raptors were interested before he ended up going down with injury, and it makes sense. So Kelly Oubre, he's putting up, while this game definitely has some flaws. 20 points per game, 5 rebounds. 3-point shooting is pretty rough, so that wouldn't be a great fit, but could definitely provide a scoring impact off the bench. 1.6 steals per game is really solid, and very handsome man. So would be a cool guy to bring in, maybe a guy we go after this off season because he's injured for the rest of this year. Maybe it's perfect time to buy low, especially if we're tanking, but you go after him the next season. It could be a cool piece to add on to the bench. But you guys are the best to make it this far. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And yeah, I appreciate everyone out here. You guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.